Hello and welcome back to Hold On I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood and you are listening to our review of UFC 297, which was headlined by Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight title, with a co-main event of Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva for the vacant women's bantamweight title. As per usual, I'm joined by my regular co-host Tom Ballum. Now Tom, a couple of days removed from the actual card itself, there's been a lot of chatter, a lot of jibber jabber, a lot of controversy. Is this, for me, this isn't a controversial take. I thought that card was crap. Like, I thought that was a crap card. Am I out of line for saying that?
Yeah, I think you might be, Joe. Yeah, I think you might be. I didn't expect much from it, and I'm certainly, I'm quick to bat away that whole notion, like, oh, it gives some lesser-known guys a chance to shine, or they really want to impress because you've never heard of them, and they've got the spotlight on them. I don't like that as a take when you get these cards, but I will say that, although some of the fighters on the card were flawed, I thought they produced some enjoyable moments, and if not setting a marker for their future conquest of the championship and the higher echelons of the sport, at least they provided some joyful moments. So no, I didn't hate it.
Okay, fair enough. Let's get straight to it then. Main event, Tom. Dricus du Plessis defeats Sean Strickland for the middleweight title via split decision. Controversy abounds over this fight for reasons I don't quite get, personally. A simple question to start with, Tom. How many times have you watched this fight now, and how did you score it on each of those viewings?
Well, before we get to that, is this one of the fights you're referring to that underwhelmed you? It was worse than you expected?
No, it was as I expected, and I didn't think it was. You know what? I take it back. It was fine. It was like a decent. It was a decent fight. Like it wasn't. It was like some people go like, that's one of the best middleweight title fights ever, or like, that's one of the. It was a war that they went to. And it's just like, let's slow down on those terms. Do you know what I mean? So I think. Do you know what? I think I'm guilty of this, and I think a lot of people can be, which is you see a reaction to something and you're like immediately anti that and it makes you diminish something in retrospect.
The other way.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I feel like
American politics.
Rewatching stuff can do that. You know, like when you rewatched Islam versus Volk 1, and you're like, oh, this wasn't actually that close at all. But like the first time you watch it, because of the, oh shit, he's moving up and he's facing Islam. It's like, yeah. Anyway,
and Tom, he surprised you. He exceeds expectations.
Exactly. Anyway, Tom, we're sort of skirting around this. The fight itself, how did you score it? Let's just go off that. The first time you watched it, because I assume you watched it twice.
Yeah. I'm just fresh off the second watch through now. I'll tell you that not much changed from my initial watch through, which kind of surprised me, having read some opinions out there on the internet. I don't think there's much room for controversy. I'll say that because there was some close rounds there. Nobody should be up in arms about anything. I think the best way to play it, Joe, is to talk about the fight round by round. Let's get into it. Let's start with that first round.
Which, do you know what? I spoke to friend of the show Adam on Sunday, and I said everyone's predictions for that fight was wrong. Like, oh, Dricus is either going to finish him in 2 or Sean's going to win over the distance. Dricus is going to win the first round, and for me, he didn't. That was a Sean Strickland round. I think that's a pretty clear Sean Strickland round.
No controversy on that take.
No, not at all. I thought it was, solid round for Strickland, starting his game plan, great, and then he didn't follow it at all after that. He double jabbed once, and it was in that round. He teeped to the body, and it was only in that round. Do you know what was
nice? They were nice, those teeps, Joe.
They
were
were
always nice. Good part of Sean's arsenal.
Yeah, which he doesn't use.
Well, he certainly did in that first round. Allowed him to cruise really. Establish the jab. The patented Sean Strickland approach. March forward. Strickland definitely had him kind of on the back foot. Du Plessis wasn't really able to read that jab. Wasn't enjoying getting popped by it, and kind of fought within himself as a consequence of that. I did notice something I found quite interesting, which was, Dricus not really settling into a preferred stance. I don't want to say he was switching between orthodox
and moving.
Southpaw. Yes, he was exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm in Southpaw now. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm in orthodox now. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it did. It obviously opened new weapons for him. Mainly through his kicking game. His hands were just nowhere to be seen in the first. Dricus couldn't get anything off. Every time he threw those overhands, they were just wild, and Sean saw them a mile away.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing that kind of surprised me, was that Dricus got in on that takedown in the first round, and then Sean sat up against the cage and moved to it, and then Dricus was sort of like on his back in the sort of way he's got like his right arm around him and he's got his left sort of like, and they're almost like side by side. And that could have been an opportunity for Dricus to go fully to the back and maybe drag him back down or whatever. But he just got to his back and then just pushed away, and then they stood back up. And I was like, that was a really weird thing to see, because it's like he didn't get any ground and pound off either. It was just sort of like, okay, I'm going to move away from here now. They circled back to the centre, and there was like another 20 seconds left of the round where not a huge amount happened, but that was, to me, was quite a weird thing to see. Was it he was just testing the waters of the takedown, of like, was that kind of my takeaway?
I think that's what it was, yeah. I think Du Plessis said as much, that he wanted to fight, on the front foot in a striking fight, but he would mix in those takedowns just to have Sean, not just standing there on his front leg, like not having his not try to stop him from leaning back as well. Sean obviously leans back out of the way of so many strikes. If your hips are in front of you, like that, you're leaning back, the takedown is there. And Dricus just wanted to mix that in and maybe sap a bit out of the tank of Sean. I don't know, I didn't credit that with any significance, that takedown. Really, the only things that Dricus was landing was the low kicks when he was in orthodox stance. And, when he went back to his southpaw stance, then he would rip that big left kick.
To the torso.
To the body. And occasionally try to go up top. But, okay, we agree on that one. First round for Strickland. And then we go into the weeds, I suspect. So, round two. How you hinted that Sean declined after the first round. How do you see that second round? What stood out to you?
I had it going for Du Plessis, simply because I think he landed the more significant power shots in that round, and I think that was actually the point in the fight where Strickland started to fight into this very odd rhythm, where he had sort of established his rhythm in the first round, and you're like, okay, Du Plessis got some things to work around, and then he very much didn't in the second round onwards. Strickland fought, a solid defensive game, but the problem is that this is a damage sport. It's all scored on damage, and I think Strickland's big issue was that if you saw the stats where it said like, oh, Strickland's landed this much to the head and Du Plessis only landed this much, oh, okay, so Sean's clearly winning. But then you look at the significant strikes, and Du Plessis and Strickland were about tit for tat. Like, there wasn't a huge difference between them from 2, 3, and 4. And it's because Du Plessis was literally mixing the targets. Those solid checking the low kicks that Strickland had in that first round, which I was super impressed by, seemed to fade away as the fight went on, and you started to see that in the second. And I gave it to Du Plessis just off of the bigger strikes. He also did get a takedown in that second round as well, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Which, again, the takedown doesn't score you points, but it nullifies time, at least in the way that Du Plessis used it. So it took away from Strickland's ability to get anything back on him. I gave the round to Du Plessis. I don't think that's a particularly controversial opinion.
Well, you're not alone in that. That's certainly a take that's out there. This was one of the rounds that I really wanted to watch through again, because on my initial watch through, I scored it for Strickland.
Oh, interesting.
So, I was really curious to see how I'd come back to it, and I'm sticking to my guns on it, Joe. I watched the round again. I thought Strickland was completely dominant, in the same way that he was dominant in the first 3.5 minutes of the round, just lighting Du Plessis up with the jab. You mentioned the lack of damage from Sean. I got to take exception to that. Like, Du Plessis' eye was closed in the second.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm not denying.
He was you can just see Du Plessis' head clocking back repeatedly throughout that first part of the round. The first 3.5 minutes, and then Du Plessis does have a strong finish to the round, and I think that's what a lot of people were swept up in. So as you mentioned, you've got the takedown. Finally, he starts connecting with a couple of those overhands, not clean connections, but Sean is getting caught, kind of just glancing blows at the end of them, and Dricus it seems to me at that kind of minute in the third to fourth minute, he's finally like, okay, I've got to go forward. I'm going to eat that jab, and I'm going to walk, and I'm going to go forward anyway, and I'm going to get my offense off, which he hadn't been able to do or prepared to do until that point. He wasn't enjoying getting jabbed, and then he just accepted it, like, okay, this is the fight I have to. Yeah, I have to. I have to walk through that.
That was the annoying thing with Strickland, I found as well, because of the jab as well. It was landing well, and then, as you say, du Plessis had to make a choice to walk through it to land anything, which to me opens up a straight. But there's the joke of like, oh, Strickland only throws 1-2. I would kill for a 2. I would kill for him to throw a 2. Like, for goodness sake, if he threw a 2, he could have won this fight very easily. Like, easily he could have won this fight. And I know there's all the people, they love to watch their little edits on the YouTubes, with like, oh, look at Strickland being a great fighter as he throws the 1-1-2 he ever landed against Adesanya.
Which was very nice. It was a great highlight.
It was a great highlight.
Timed him straight down the pipe.
Yeah. Great, yeah. Did it once in his entire career.
I mean, I will say, like, Sean, he has this tendency, like, to whip this weird kind of overhand with his right more often than he'll throw a 2. Yeah, he's kind of like peeling off, and it's a very strange dynamic on it, and it got really wild later in the fight. That thing was coming. Yeah.
Well, actually, we'll save that for round 5. But I actually credited him for when he started doing that. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, he's finally starting to be like, I've got to start throwing some stuff to win rounds here. So,
let me just finish with my thoughts there, Joe.
Yeah, go on.
He won the round. All right? Sean won that round for me. Close round, but I scored it for Sean. And then you get onto the third. I mean, do you hate my take there? Is that incomprehensible to you?
Do you want to know something? Is that round 3, what you said about round 2, though, is kind of what I felt about round 3. I still gave round 3 to du Plessis. But I felt that was a better round for Sean compared to the second. But I still gave it to du Plessis. I don't know if you're off base there.
Well, so this was the round that was like the closest to me calling differently on the second watch through.
Right.
When I first watched it, on Sunday, I thought it was a clear du Plessis round.
Right.
Yeah, like really comfortable. Basically off what I was saying, the continuation from what we were talking about at the end of the second, where he just started applying forward pressure and but actually I thought it was razor thin. Could go either way, as you say. They're matched up on the strikes. Du Plessis not really getting any, like, landing anything big, and of course Sean is still just pepping that jab, but du Plessis is coming forwards. I gave it to du Plessis, but actually a closer round for me than the second.
I agree, because I had number 2 for du Plessis, not comfortably, but by a slightly larger margin than the third. And I actually felt that the fight kind of came down to the third round of how you scored that, because for me 4 is a clear du Plessis round.
Oh yeah. I think 4 is the most dominant round of the fight, more dominant than Sean's first round.
Yeah. So yeah, I had it 3-1 going into the 5th.
Well, let's just talk about the 4th for a moment, because it was a pretty exciting round.
It was great.
Du Plessis really landed on him. I mean, of course, there's a bit of controversy. Sean kind of suggests that he was headbutted to open that cut. I didn't see that, Joe. I've watched it a couple of times now.
No.
Is there an image out there? It was a right hand and an elbow. It was
the right hand that opened the cut, and then they got into a clinch exchange. And then du Plessis was going for a takedown, but Sean sort of like got an underhook and pushed him up. And as du Plessis came up, his head collided with Strickland's up against the cage. Right. So the idea that that's a deliberate headbutt, that like du Plessis, who was going in on the takedown, if he gave up the takedown to then just headbutt him instead, and then they circled off, I don't think that's
that.
Yeah,
you'd love that.
I don't think that's a particularly good game plan, because you'd rather have the takedown. To be honest. Also, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some martial arts guru here, Tom, but, from my very brief excursions into martial arts, and, I did a bit of boxing
Remember
training.
the name.
Yeah, remember the name. The amount of accidental collisions that happen it's staggering, to be honest. Like, the amount of times, like, I had a friend who boxed to actually a very good level when I was at uni, and I did a bit of boxing training with him. And the amount of times I've like clashed heads like accidentally, it's like, I mean, admittedly, I'm a very clumsy person anyway, but like add that in with another person who may also be clumsy, you're going to have something mad happen. And let's just say Dricus du Plessis, you would describe him as a janky man, wouldn't you, in terms of his movements? And Sean Strickland's hardly, prime Mighty Mouse, is he, in terms of his movement? So these things happen, and to me, the idea of like that's a deliberate headbutt is
no way
tenuous to say.
And the right hand had already opened that cut. I mean, it ended up cutting Sean on both sides. He cut him earlier on the temple, the left hand as well. So I mean, yeah, dominant round for Dricus. Yep. He was exploding. There was trips in there. There was a double leg takedown. He was really throwing Sean around.
Was that also the round? That was the round as well, if I remember correctly, where Sean did something. I don't know if you had this moment. He did something where I'm like, oh no, that's a mistake. Do you remember the what I'm referring to?
Not fresh to mind. No.
Is that the round where he clinched with du Plessis? I'm like, oh no, that's a mistake. He's about to go down, and then du Plessis tripped him and took him down. That was in the fourth.
That was the round he landed the trip in. So yeah, yes, it must be.
But Sean clinched with him. He engaged the clinch. I'm like, oh no, and I was like, he's tired. He's tired.
That's it, Joe, because he started getting clocked with those big overhands. I mean, once the cut is opened, it was pretty clear that Sean either tired dramatically or also couldn't see. You know? And that's when Dricus started landing those overhands, those big,
clubbing
wild
blows.
Yeah, and
Clubs,
they started clocking. Clocking Sean. Fourth round goes to du Plessis. Takes us to the fifth. For me, that's the deciding round. Then the fifth. I have it 2-2 at this point.
Yep.
For you, obviously, du Plessis got it in the bag, and Strickland needs a big round or a finish.
Yep.
Fifth round was for Strickland, Joe.
Yeah. That's when he started like lunging that huge right hand. It started like just winging these shots, and du Plessis had no answer for it. He had no answer for it, and it was like, Jesus, this is not a good look. And yeah, and then you had that hilarious sloppy final 10 seconds where Strickland did that jump knee and then winging a shot, and du Plessis was on one leg trying to push him away, and Strickland wings a massive right hand that goes nowhere near du Plessis. And I mean, I thought that was a clear Strickland round, and actually was the round where he started to move forward again. Rounds 2, 3, 4, there was a lot of Strickland going backwards. This whole thing of like he only pushes forward, he only walks forward, is a bit of a fallacy, I think, particularly against a guy like du Plessis who can go. He has to go forward. He can't really go backwards. Against someone like Adesanya, I think someone against like Adesanya, for example, invited that so much that it allowed Strickland just to fight at a tempo and rhythm that suited him. Whereas against du Plessis, who is going to have to charge in, it sort of disrupted the rhythm. So I think this whole thing of like,
I want to credit du Plessis for that rather than criticize Sean, because
that is a credit.
Like, if you're getting lit up by that jab, and he was, Joe. I know you want to be dismissive, but just the state of du Plessis' eye. Have you seen what he looks like in the post-fight press conference? His whole face is like, he said himself, he looks like a cauliflower. He got brutalized by that jab, and it's not easy to just say, all right, I'm gonna take these repeated blows, and and Sean was sticking him with that. I have it then, Sean winning 48-47.
Yep.
I'm not alone in that take. There's a lot of people who thought that Sean won the fight.
Yep. Are you mad at the idea of du Plessis winning it?
Absolutely not. No, second and third can go either way. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good fight. I thought it delivered. It wasn't like a blockbuster for the ages, but I've seen much worse. We'll get onto that after this fight.
Oh right. Look, I mean, here's my issue with this fight is that I don't know. Like, I was watching it and I'm so frustrated when I watch Strickland. I'm so frustrated. I mean there's so many reasons.
It's fair to describe you as a hater. I think that's fair. You are a hater, right?
I dislike his personality, greatly. Yeah. I mean, I think he's a homophobe. He is. I'm not particularly down with that sort of thing. And then I watch his fight style. Look, but that's the thing, though. It's like, okay, he's a homophobe and his fight style is boring. So for me, that's unacceptable. Yeah, Whereas, Jose Aldo, who loves Bolsonaro, it's like, well, he had dope calf kick, so I can forgive it. Like, that's just the nature of the game.
Joe Greenwood math right there.
Well, yeah, I'm not expecting these guys to be great people. That's fine. But, the guy's a homophobe. He's a racist, whatever else that you want to go down that line.
Joe, are you attacking our subscription base again? Are you taking a hatchet to the fans out there?
Look, man, there's do you enjoy Sean Strickland in any aspect?
Yeah.
What aspects do you enjoy? His thoughts on parenting.
So, I'll say I find him somewhat intriguing when I listen to him. When he's talking just with the press. The way he kind of carries that room, he's a bit awkward. He's a bit shy, and then he kind of he's just an interesting personality. I don't know personally that he. I mean, I accept that he says some, you could quote him, and he definitely says some pretty strong things, to put it mildly, but that's, if 99.5% of the things he says don't indicate something, and then he does say something that's a little bit past the line. I mean, Joe, I can highlight some quotes of yours that would get us removed from the air, but I don't think that's representative of you as a person, And so if you got a mic held up to somebody the whole time,
I'm trying to think what I've said that's so bad now, but
well, it's not for public consumption.
Okay. Yeah, probably fair enough.
The Brighton Constabulary have got it on record somewhere.
What? Hold on, this is some mark that I'm getting here that is not fair. Look, listen, man. Okay. Here's the
Sean
thing,
is fine. I don't mind him, and I'll tell you what. He's a star, Joe. The crowd, they pop for him.
But why though? But then, they start watching the fight, and they're like, "Yeah, Sean," and then by the end of it, they're cheering for DDP.
Fight.
Then they're cheering for DDP. It wasn't that good.
Credit to DDP for that. I thought that was quite
but
poignant.
Did you not notice that rounds 2, 3, 4, that crowd were awfully quiet? It wasn't like they were erupting. They were like, oh shit, now we actually have to watch this guy fight, and we paid how much to be here? Again, and I watched this, and I was thinking, these two against Prime Anderson Silva, I mean, Jesus, they would stand no chance. And I was thinking, against Prime Chris Weidman, they wouldn't stand a chance. And I'm like, Prime Rich Franklin? Would Rich Franklin get them out of there? And I'm like, Jesus. Chael Sonnen? Would Chael Sonnen at his prime beat these two? I started to question it. And now the sport's in a pretty bad spot, I think, when these two are at the top of the middleweight division. Middleweight's in a really rough spot, compared to some of its peaks. I don't know.
That brings us on to where we go with this. We have this result in a close fight.
Adesanya.
Where do you go? Where do you go with Sean first?
Oh, Sean. Yeah. I would have him face the loser of Costa versus Whittaker.
The loser. And the winner's
Hamzat.
The winner of that fight will fight Hamzat.
Yeah.
Okay. I do like that.
Yeah, there we go. Why? What would you do?
I like that a lot. I mean, depending on how that fight goes, one of them could be position for the belt. I'm not really looking to see Whittaker fight Du Plessis again. He needs a bit more after the.
Hence, why I think the winner should face Hamzat.
Yeah.
Not that I'm giving away my choice here because I haven't really made a pick yet.
But just imagine Paulo Costa and Du Plessis.
Oh. No USADA.
Yeah. Oh my, I like that.
Bring back Rick
Put it in
Rufi.
South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa. Do you know, I would be a little bit annoyed if they did do that fight in South Africa, where it's just bro, if you had 3 African champions and you didn't do an event in Africa, and then finally you get a white one, and you're like, okay, let's roll out to Africa, lads. Come on, let's get the show rolling. Look.
Oh well, I was tempted to ask some questions on that line, but I won't. So DDP then, who's he fighting? Is he fighting Adesanya at UFC 300?
Yeah, it has to be Adesanya. It has to be
at UFC 300.
I'm gonna guess 301.
Oh.
That's my pick.
I mean, is that fitting as a headliner for UFC 300? Is it big enough?
I think that's. A grudge match. The thing about UFC 100 was Mir versus Lesnar. UFC 200 was McGregor Diaz and then Jones Cormier. These are grudge matches. They had some beef going into it. UFC 300 Du Plessis versus Adesanya main event. co-main event of Gaethje versus Holloway and Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan and Prohajka Rakic. What's the other fight on the main card?
That's hot.
Yeah, it's a great card. If like you gave me that card, I'm like, yeah, like, you know, I'm in a little bit of a down point with MMA in general. I think that the last couple months have been pretty horrendous for the sport, and I think that's partly tied into like the promotion of Strickland, du Plessis, and Colby Covington. Honestly, man, like I really don't like it. We're talking about like these things like, oh, look at the trash talk. They're really bad at it. They're bad at trash talk. So don't do it. Like, don't do an impression of Conor. Don't do an impression of Nate. Don't do an impression of Chael. Like, just be yourself, you know? And, like, I don't know. Like, it's just ties into my sort of dismaying thoughts of the sport. But, you know, these next couple events, if you do have du Plessis Adesanya on the main event of 300, which I don't think it will be, yeah, great. Really happy with that.
Win you back over. Well, look, Joe, onwards and upwards. The co-main of this fight.
Wait, hold on. So, what do you want Adesanya DDP?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it's big enough. Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. I mean, DDP. He mentioned Alex Pereira. That sounds comical, and I hadn't considered it as a possibility. Yeah. Yeah, he's been talking about he wants 2 belts and all this, and he did say something interesting. Actually, I'll pick your brain on this. He said that like he wants fights that make sense, i.e., like, you know, big fights, money fights. Legacy fights, they all say these things, and he said that Adesanya should never have fought Strickland in the first place.
Yeah. I
didn't like that comment. I don't like that comment from my new champ. You know, I don't want to hear that kind of stuff. You fight who's there, the man who's on the spot. You know, you don't pick your fights, especially if you just win a split decision. You know that, to get the belt.
But Dricus has shown that he's willing to say no to the UFC, and that's why Dana was so pissed about him winning. Because he turned down the Adesanya fight because he said, I'm not ready, I'm injured.
Well, he had a broken foot.
Yeah, and it's like, he was right to turn that fight down. I think...
Might only get one shot.
Yeah, and I think also DDP was thinking, well, I wanted to beat Adesanya. And Strickland took that from me. Like, I think that was maybe what he was thinking in terms of like a jealousy type thing, but, you know, he got the win over Strickland. It was a tight win. It was a tough fight. I mean, you know, just to stay on Adesanya DDP just very briefly, first gut reaction, what are you leaning towards?
Well, I don't know what Israel Adesanya you're going to get. I don't know. I assume you're going to get... If I look at his record and I think about his kind of trials and tribulations, I've got to think about him coming back to fight Pereira after he's lost 3 times and knocking him out. And, you know, I've got to go off that and say we get the same kind of guy. I mean... Du Plessis is so one-dimensional in a way. Like, he's not one-dimensional. That's not fair. But he's like uncouth. You know, he's a barbarian.
Very uncouth.
You know, there are openings. That's what I'm saying. And it should be tailor-made for Adesanya in my book, unless he's very tentative. You know.
Do you think Adesanya is still the best middleweight in the world?
Yeah. I do. I think you have to look at his body of work, his age, and his prior performances, and, you know, that's Strickland one. I still think you underrate Strickland.
No, I'm frustrated by him. I don't underrate him. What the thing is that I have with Strickland is that, like, and I compare him to his teammate Chris Curtis, is that Strickland has really good defense. Like, I'm going to give him a lot of credit. He has really good defense for MMA.
Yes, he does, Joe. Exceptional, elite.
So the whole thing with defense then is that you protect yourself and then you put yourself in a position to fire back. There were so many times where he had his arm out blocking a shot, like his left arm was like way up and way, and there's no way he could use that for anything then. You know, and there are points where he rolled with shots, like he did a shoulder roll, and you're like, oh great, now he's going to return with a straight from there, and then he just doesn't. He just resets into a jabbing step. He doesn't use the defense to set up the attack. So
well, and the jab itself, you know, the jab is usually a weapon that opens up so many other pathways, you know. But like you said, it's just a jab, you know, and he doesn't diversify off of that. He doesn't throw anything off of it. So I get it.
I give him a lot of credit though for getting to that level with just a jab and a teep.
Yeah, basically. And like, I think he's pretty unique in being able to stand in that space and trade with pretty much anybody. You never think, oh, someone's going to knock Sean out. Obviously, we have seen it against Pereira, But
that Sean doesn't exist
else.
anymore. That Sean doesn't exist anymore. The Sean that lost to Pereira, he wouldn't fight like that again against Pereira, I don't think. I mean, he knows not to, but that's that's a different thing. Right, co-main event. Raquel Pennington versus Maia Brenna Silva. Pennington wins by decision. Now, Tom, this is a 25-minute fight. How many minutes of it did you watch?
I tried, Joe. I tried. I really did. I have a daughter,
Yeah.
I want to promote, women's sports. And
yeah.
Yeah, so I got about 30 seconds in. And I kind of, I skipped forwards after that. Just like, okay, as soon as, if I see a clinch, next time I've skipped forward, then I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'll just go about 20 minutes forwards and see the result. And yeah, that's what happened. So we're riding the Joe Greenwood Express here. Tell us, play by play, our women's bantamweight corner with Joe Greenwood. How was it?
I watched even less than that, to be honest, Tom. Like it was not good, man. Do you know what my viewing pattern for this was? I was just like, right, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to skip forward, and I'm going to see what position they're in, and then it's like, okay, they're in this position. Okay, let's go forward a bit there. But Silva she got a sub attacking. Let's see what's happens here. She fought out of it. Okay, cool. All right, next round. Okay, I'll give that round to Bueno Silva. Next round, skip forward. This kind of looks like a Pennington round. Skip forward. Pennington gets mount. Okay, here we go. We're going to get a finish here. 3.5 minutes of that, of me skipping forward through that to see where the finish was going to come. And then, all right, I got the idea. 25 minutes. I'm not watching that. Like, I'm sorry. That is dog shit. It's a great story that Pennington's come back, made herself a bit of a tricky customer for, the fellow competitors at the women's bantamweight division. Great story coming back from, an absolute mauling against Amanda Nunes. But again, Nunes could come back tomorrow and just be the champion straight away. Like, there's no... I mean, she's not been away for that long, to be honest, for it to refresh. And actually, I'm going to say this here. Valentina Shevchenko must be thinking, I can take any of these. Erin Blanchfield must be thinking she can take any of these. And particularly if Juliana Pena comes back and wins the title, who I just think is a terrible fighter. They would both lose to... Like, I think Pennington, Pena, Aldana, if they fought Shevchenko or Erin Blanchfield, they would lose. They would lose. And I even think they might even lose to Zhang Weili. Like, it's that level, I think. Zhang Weili might jump up 2 divisions to face Pena or Pennington.
Well, it looks like Pena next, anyway.
Cool.
Yeah. What do you say, Joe? Like, it was
a
worse.
bad division.
We didn't have much to say about it in the preview, but it ended up being worse than that.
Can I ask you something? Do you think Ronda comes back?
For UFC 300 again?
Ooh!
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're Ronda Rousey and you think about how you exited the UFC, which, was absolutely, like, big downfall, completely exposed, embarrassing, and then you think, well, can she do a judo throw against Pennington? Probably
maybe.
She can. Yeah, right.
I'd watch it.
Could she rematch Nunes and get anything from that? Hell no.
No.
Hell no. So, like, if she wants to do it, now's the time.
Did you see Cyborg saying me and Nunes should run it back for the bantamweight title? And it's just like completely ignoring that Pennington's just won it. If Cyborg came back, won the 135 division, Nunes would have to come back for that. No, she'd have to.
I don't know where Nunes is at. I don't know. Like, she went up to Cyborg's weight class and clowned her,
that's one of the best fights ever. They were just swanging at each other. It was brilliant.
They were swanging. Yeah, that was like heavyweight MMA. And of course it was the female equivalent. I don't know.
Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we have to, Joe, before everyone turns it off.
Right, Neil Magny defeats Mike Malott via TKO in round 3, 4 minutes 45 of round number 3. Now, Tom, I'm going to tell you my viewing experience of watching this fight. I was watching it, and honestly, midway through round 2, I was just like, man, hope Neil Magny's made enough money to retire, because this is not looking good. Maybe he could be a coach or something. I hope Magny's doing all right, because this is bad. And then Mike Malott did one of the most idiotic things I've ever seen. where he went for a fucking heel hook on Neil Magny, and it was nowhere near, and then Magny gets on top. He elevates his hips, so then Malott is trapped. Like, he can't get his hips to the ground and get his legs moving, and his shoulder is pinned. So basically, his legs are dangling in the air, trapped between Magny's sort of triangle grip he's got. And Magny starts unloading. I'm going, come on, Neil. Please, Neil, do it. Neil. And not realising that if Malott had rode out the rest of that round, I would have won the decisions game. Like, I would have won the game between me and you.
Right.
But the joy of watching Magny put on an absolute whooping to come back from being destroyed was too much for me. Like,
this
it was brilliant.
This is what I was getting at, Joe. And you said you hated the card and blah 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 blah. Now, I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was absolutely like the hometown boy, like this great record. He's a finisher. He wants to put on great displays, and he walks into the classic Neil Magny spiderweb and finds himself stuck at the bottom getting mollywopped. It was great. It was absolutely.
You've
great.
been Magnied.
So happy for Neil. Yeah. He got Magnied.
Yeah.
He got. Yeah. I mean, that was wonderful. It wasn't elite high tier. It was fundamentally flawed overconfidence from Malott.
But he had him in guard. He got him in guard in the third round, and I'm like, okay, he's going to ride this out. He's going to get back up, get to a hip, move up there. Gets to a hip, and then he's just like, we're going to go for that ankle right there. What an idiot! It was a moronic choice, and frankly, Malott, you should never be ranked now because of that. You could win 7 fights in a row, and I never want to see you ranked like that.
You got the stain.
Exactly.
On you. You've been marked.
Exactly.
I mean, but that is just one for the ages. It's like when Duplessis, when Derek Lewis came out and knocked
Volkov.
out. No, I mean, of course, it was similar in the like after getting dominated and then winning late on. No, I was going to say, like, it was one of those, like, it's like a bingo moment when you watch a UFC card. When Lewis had been through a bad patch and he fought that Brazilian and he opened with a flying knee.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I mean, it's just a beautiful moment. Derek Lewis knocking somebody out, getting back on the horse, and somebody going into deep waters with Neil Magny and drowning. I felt exactly the same watching the fight as you did as well. I was like, oh, Neil, like, how are you still ranked, brother? Like,
yeah.
And I was cheering on Malott, to be honest. I was like, right, new blood, let's go. And yeah.
He did actually follow the Ian Gary game plan as well, just like, bashing away at Magny's legs, and when Neil was like shaking out that calf, I'm like, oh, Neil, mate, God, you don't have to keep doing this, please. Like, it wasn't like, like Tony Ferguson where I'm like, this is sad. I'm like...
No, he's not washed. It's just the sport has evolved around him.
I don't know. I was a bit like, I think Neil's washed. Like, I thought, like, we're borderline.
That's his style, Joe.
I know.
That's his style. His style is being washed.
But, like, it's like he... whenever he gets calf kicked, he's almost like he slides like he's on ice for a moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, where he's just like, whoa. Like, it's like he's done a little slip across, like, a bit of slippery floor. It's just like, Neil, mate, just if you could check low kicks.
Nah, not happening, mate. 40 fights in. He's not learning to check kicks.
Chris Curtis defeats Marc-Andre Barriault. Was it by unanimous decision?
Yes.
It was unanimous.
Yes.
What on earth was this fight? I got to say, by the way, my main positive from this fight is that Chris Curtis is so sound defensively. Like, he is so sound defensively. It was very impressive with, like, every single big shot that Barriault threw was blocked. And then Barriault, dickhead, fought like, I don't know what he was doing. Like, I'm going to be on the outside countering low calf kicks. Curtis won't get near me. And then Curtis just blasts him with a straight to the body.
I have to issue a correction. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to stop you mid-flow there, but I have erred. It was a split decision. 2 judges gave it 30-27 Curtis.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, one judge, Derek Clearly, gave it the last 2 rounds to Barriault. So sorry.
I gave Barriault the last round. So I had it 29-28 Curtis.
Yeah, I had it 29-28 Curtis.
Barriault, I mean, only when he started to actually fight like Marc-Andre Barriault did he get anywhere. Like, when he was clinching him and just uppercutting him, that was brilliant. Like, that's when the fight sort of came alive. And the fans booing Curtis because Chris Curtis fought like Chris Curtis was ridiculous. Like, that fight was on Marc-Andre Barriault for how poor it was, I thought, overall. Well,
it was only the 3rd round, that he finally obliged Curtis. I I don't have actually my scoring for that right in front of me here. I don't think it was the third that I gave to Barrio. I thought then he was fighting on Curtis's terms. I thought, yeah,
it was the second. It was the second that went to Barrio.
Right. Yeah, that makes more sense. Because, it was on Barrio for how bad that fight was, but then when he started fighting, on the front foot, and that's the fight that I saw when I made my prediction.
Same.
It's like you can't sit in the pocket with Chris Curtis.
No.
You can't stand in front of the man, You
got to clinch him. You got to clinch him or be on the outside.
Yeah, all the way in or all the way out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the man got out kickboxed by Jack Hermansson. The blueprint is there if you want to fight that kind of fight. I think that's what Barrio was trying to achieve in the early offing. And, it wasn't there. It made for a poor spectacle.
The reason why the Hermansson one worked was because no one expected it. Like, no one expected him to do that. None more so than Chris Curtis. And next thing you know is it's 2 rounds down and he's got 5 minutes to go against Hermansson. He's got to try and get a finish, and it's just not going to happen. Like, it's...
Well, he just wouldn't oblige him. Barrio also didn't have the toolkit to do that, though, Joe. Like, Hermansson could stick a move with those kicks, much more dynamic movement than...
Barrio needed to be on the inside from minute 1. He needs to be clinching him, elbows, knees, that sort of thing. He just didn't do it.
But Curtis didn't tire, Like, no. I don't think he would... I think he's happy to fight that kind of fight. In fact, I think he preferred that kind of fight to the one that he ended up having in the first and second round. Chris just wants to stand and trade with you. Like, he doesn't want to follow you. He doesn't want you to put too much... He doesn't want you on the front foot. He just wants you to stand there with him, and you can just trade, hooks to the body. He was ripping some nice uppercuts to the body.
Yeah, lovely.
He was just going to town on them.
Also, I will say, I did give the third round to Curtis, even when Barrio opened, because it's like, Barrio opened up, he started landing some more shots, but then that allowed Curtis to open up a lot more as well. Like, it did make for a much more exciting fight, just those last 3 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Just a frustrating watch. Not really much to say. Anything else you want to see from Curtis? Like, you go on.
No. I mean, I think that's a good question, Curtis. I would say that, we've seen the evidence now. Chris Curtis needs to fight certain kinds of fights to make them interesting. Otherwise, you're going to get a boring fight. And he's never going to be the champ. He's at the best position he can be at in the sport. He's reached his ceiling. The whole nice guy, smiley guy, happy story, that seems to have worn off a little bit.
Yeah. He's quite a grumpy lad, isn't he? Which I quite like.
Yeah,
to be honest.
That was such a bad look after the Hermansson fight. That he was so limited that he didn't have the tools to deal with Hermansson fighting like that, and then he blamed Hermansson for it.
And then over celebrating when Dolidze won, when he beat Hermansson. Yeah, and he started rubbing it in Hermansson's face. I'm like, mate, you didn't do that. Like, I don't know. It just came out as quite a petty person, I find. Which all fighters are sensitive. Like, let's not pretend otherwise. They do something which is incredible and outside of our sense of reality. So they're probably going to feel things in a different way that we never will. So I get it if Chris Curtis is a bit sensitive. I get it if these guys, maybe don't respond in the nicest way to things. I like Chris Curtis. I thought he was good. The one I always think about is the Rodolfo Vieira one, where Vieira was just going in on takedowns with him, and he got him in the first, but then Curtis started to take over in rounds 2 and 3 and put on a really good performance. It's like Chris Curtis has these performances in him, but as you said, it has to be guys that are willing to oblige him. And Barrio
on that note, I'm thinking, has he got a fight?
He's got Dolidze. That's the next main event.
Fight the loser of that then, Curtis.
Yeah, I like that.
Like, Curtis fights up then, he's sat ranked at 13, Immobil ahead of him at 11, and Dolidze at 8. Yeah, the loser of that fight next for Chris.
Nice. Let's talk about this fight that opened the main card. Arnold Allen loses a decision victory to Movsar Evloev. I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation. There was about 5 different ones going on the...
Evloev seemed to be the dominant one that emerged. Yeah, not sure if that's right, but they put that message across to me.
Right,
and it was kind of correcting the other boys.
Yeah. Evloev wins a decision victory over Arnold Allen. Now, before we recorded, Tom said that national pride took over with that fight. Do you mean in terms of picking Arnold Allen or the scoring?
Yeah. I don't think there's any controversy about the scoring, but you've piqued my curiosity with that comment, Joe. Let's go through it then. How'd you see the fight? How'd you see the early off?
I did 29-28 I had it 29-28 Allen, but I'm also can see 29-28 Evloev as well.
Well, I'm giving some time for that to sink in. My eyes are wide open right now.
Why?
Joe.
What do you have it?
You've just told me that the Earth is flat.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'd like Evloev won that fight.
Okay.
Like the only round you can score for Allen is the third, and that's if you accept those knees. Like if you accept the damage done by those knees, which
I disagree. Even without those knees, he won that round. He landed the best combination of the whole fight.
Those knees changed the fight.
Yeah, but those knees are bullshit. Yeah, let's be honest. That rule is bull.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah. And when Evloev is reaching down for the mat, because he's compromised, he doesn't like the position he's in, and he's like, "Oh Lord, how do I get out of this?" Oh,
Oh, my fingertips are grazing. Yeah, they're grazing. What I don't get is if you really want to protect yourself from that, why don't you just drop down to a knee? Because then he definitely can't do it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, then you've given up. You've given up the position.
Sure, but then you have to fight yourself to another position rather than getting kneed in the head. He didn't benefit in any way. Here's the thing: is that the only thing that benefited from it was that the position was broken up. To get that, though, he had to get kneed in the head multiple times. Like, if you just drop to a knee, you go into a worse position, yes, but you don't get kneed in the head. To me, there's no debate there. What I would rather, I'd rather just drop to the knee.
Given like Evloev's ability to scramble and come out on top, you probably should drop to the knee, because we should also talk about that ninja choke that Allen had in the third.
Brilliant.
And Evloev just absolutely immaculate, having sustained that damage as well. It was so fast to react to it, and the gator roll which took him out. And then Allen, he was coming on the front foot at the end of the fight. It was a great fight. I wanted 2 more rounds.
Same.
And because I did feel like Allen was coming into the fight more as it progressed. Like, I'm not trying to besmirch Arnold Allen, but I struggle to see how you.
I gave him the first round. I thought it was a pretty close one. I know Evloev had the grappling, but there was no damage there. Like that was the thing. I saw Evloev get that control. It was like the last minute or so of the round. And I'm like, okay, is he winning the round? But but the damage, like, that's the thing I kept going for. And it's like, what damage do I prefer? It's just like, do I prefer Evloev's like jab, or do I prefer Arnold Allen's straights to the body? Like, do I prefer the body work? And I prefer the body work personally, but again, I'm happy for Evloev to win that round. To me, it's not a huge controversy for him to win. The big controversy for me is in the rankings, that both of these guys should be in the top 5. And, Brian Ortega is an absolute fraudulent fighter who should not be in there, and the UFC is a fraudulent division. These two should be way up there as title contenders. Like, again, it was one of these fights where whoever lost, I don't think really lost that much in terms of credibility.
No, quite the opposite. I'm like, oh my god, these guys are so good.
Yeah.
They're so damn good.
They're so good.
But Evloev is better.
Just a step ahead, just a slight step ahead on this.
And that's how I felt in that first round. I mean, I'm just looking back over the, like what the numbers there. Total strikes 22-13, 2 takedowns, fair bit, like a lot of control time.
I mean, all I can go off is what I watched the first time round, and I gave it to Allen again.
Did you have Rule Britannia playing in the background? Might that have influenced you?
No, but I did have Vindaloo playing, because that is the real national anthem of Great Britain. No. What do you think next for Evloev?
I mean,
number 1 contender.
18-0 is no joke, Daniel. As the man himself said, it is no joke, and he's so good.
Yeah,
he's so good. So yeah, I mean, honestly, he's better than I thought he was, and I thought he was pretty good, but I didn't know that. They've boosted him all the way up to top 5 as you requested. He's jumped 4 places with that win.
So he's number 5.
He's number 5.
Where's
Allen
Arnold?
Drops down to number 6 now.
That's fine. Wait, hold on. Where's Brian Ortega?
So he's ahead of both of them at 4, Joe. Ahead of both of them at 4.
How is Ortega still ahead? How is he ahead of Evloev?
Yeah,
so then hold on,
it's madness.
Then who's? Can you talk out the rest of the top 5 for me?
Yeah, so of course we got the champ Volk. He's going to fight third ranked Ilitopuria, and between them you've got Yair at 2nd and Holloway at 1st. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
he's probably generously positioned too on that.
That's borderline, isn't it? I feel like Evloev should be ahead of him as well.
Right.
Like, yeah.
But below Topuria. So we're saying official
Topuria
rankings
number
of
one.
Volkanovski, Topuria number 1 contender, Evloev. Holloway number 1 contender. Yeah.
No. Topuria number 1, Holloway number 2.
Nah. How are you putting Holloway there, Joe?
Who's he beat?
Lost to? Who's he lost to?
I knew that would pop you. No, yeah, 1 or 2 is fine for Max. I mean, yeah, that's fine.
Max is number 1 until proven otherwise.
I just think he needs to be in like a different ranking. He can be number 1, but Topuria should also be number 1. If that makes sense. You got 1 and you got 1A, which is Max.
Yeah, I mean that's what Volkanovski's done to him. He's confined him to that space. That's why he should just fight Gaethje.
He should just be permanent interim champ.
Yeah,
that's the other option.
Exactly. If anyone can beat Volk, and Volk doesn't want to fight them again, Max.
So then, if Evloev faces the winner of Ortega Yair, then I'm presuming that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it? Has to be.
Emmett?
I mean, he beats both of them, doesn't he? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I don't think Ortega stands a chance against him, and I think Yair would be in a lot of trouble as well.
I mean, can he be submissive of Evloev? We've seen him in some pretty compromising positions, but
I prefer Diego Lopez as a grappler over Brian Ortega.
Yeah,
I think he's a more proactive thing, and also,
certainly.
I've also got to say this. Adam was saying this the other day. It's kind of bullshit that Yair wasn't given the submission win over Ortega because he put a submission in and then his shoulder popped out. Like, he didn't get it all the way in and the shoulder popped out. Like, how is that not a submission win?
Yeah, that's a fair point.
It is a fair point. So, Ortega, his record recently is destruction by Volkanovski and then a submission loss to Yair. Right? Like, those are his last 2 fights.
And the big win is over Chanson Jung, who is
retired.
Totally finished. So, yeah, he's one of those, like when Colby spent 5 years still in the top 5,
Yeah.
But it's just, but he doesn't have the fan base, so I don't understand. But Dana is doubling down on it. He hated this fight. He said,
"Well, he's a casual. He's a casual." Like, this is the problem with MMA at the moment, is that I think that the barrier has never been so low into watching the sport. And to be honest, the biggest barrier is the price of like tickets and pay-per-views, because pay-per-view sales are going down. Like, that is demonstrably true. So yeah, it's not in a great spot. And then the fact that everything's so casual in relation to the sport, whether that's media itself, where most of these people get interviewed by YouTubers now who don't really know much about the sport, where they're like, "Oh, how hard does that guy punch?" Like, "Oh, great question for Alexander Volkanovski there, the best fighter in the world, like, one of the greatest to ever do it. Okay, great question." I don't know, man. Like, do you remember, like, when you got into the sport, it was like, what? It was probably a similar year as me. Like, I'm guessing 05 to 07, somewhere in there.
Yeah, maybe more like 07 to 09, I think.
Okay.
So, like, when I was a fully fledged fan.
Yeah, okay. Like, I felt like the idea of being a casual or being caught out as a casual on, like, online spaces was just, like, the most embarrassing thing possible. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt like there was a bit more of, like, a barrier set there. Where it's just like...
Well, it's much more niche.
You've never even watched Pride. You don't even... do you watch Dream? Like, do you even watch Dream? WEC? You're like, oh, no. Like
but it's much more niche back then, Joe. Now it's a mainstream sport with all that goes along with it. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we should be able to go, like... Have you even watched Babalu? Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to... I think that there needs to be a bit more of, like, a... Not in a sense of, like, exclusion for people, but sort of, like, you have to watch this stuff to really love this. Like, if you want to love this sport, you can't just watch the same Sean Strickland highlights.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Max
I think
Holloway.
I understand the Joe Greenwood mentality right now. I think what it is, you're an elitist, Joe. And
yes.
Sean is everything that you hate because of that. He's a redneck.
The fandom around him and Colby Covington is what I hate.
But they hate it. Like, Sean is very critical of Colby.
I'm not saying that those two together. I mean,
like, there's the fan base overlap between them. Yeah, sure, yeah. But I think they're putting it now where you have to choose between them, and obviously Sean he's the real people's champ.
Yeah, because he goes out there and is a bit more blood and guts than Colby, and like Colby knew that was his last chance at a title if he lost, and he laid an egg, and
Well, yeah, but I mean, we've talked about that before. I just think Leon gave him no choice.
What do you mean?
Like Colby, I don't think he could fight that fight differently. I just think Leon took him
because of
apart
Leon's ability,
quite surgically. Yeah. I just think the leg kicks, the defense. Like I just don't. Colby didn't want to get knocked out.
Card. We didn't review that card. I never really got your opinion on that fight.
It was a total dominance. Leon absolutely neutralized him. I understand the criticism of Colby because he just went down with a whimper, but I think for him personally, it was like, I don't want to get knocked out by this guy after all that I've said and done.
Yeah,
that's immortal. If I get knocked out, I can't beat him anyway.
Yeah, after 4 rounds where like nothing's happened, and in the 5th where he only got into a dominant position because Leon was fucking around. Like,
that's how good Leon was, though. He was just proving points. Like if Colby obliged him, he'd have knocked him out.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I think that there's a great link as well between that fight and the Arnold Allen and Evloev fight. Is that most of these wrestlers don't have a huge submission threat. Like Arnold Allen showed that. Like Evloev got to his back and Allen got up. Like Allen's takedown defense was brilliant in that fight, I thought, at points.
There was one other thing I want to highlight about Allen. I know I'm cutting you off mid-point there.
No, go for it.
Those elbows, Joe, when Evloev had his back, like throughout the fight.
Yeah. Really good. The sort of like swinging back elbow.
Yeah. I mean, he absolutely, he was landing them. He was really, really landing them in a way that you don't normally see. When somebody has your back, even when you're on the feet, if somebody has your back, then often the fight is just concentrating on keeping their balance and, they're definitely not landing anything. But throughout the fight, especially in the 3rd, he was absolutely rocking Evloev with those elbows. And it's such an awkward position to land, Yeah. Because you can't 12-6 them still, right?
That's true, yeah.
But true. Credit to Allen for that. So it was active takedown defense and also causing damage. Like when Tony would get his elbows off from the back.
Rest in peace. Yeah. Who do you have next for Allen, by the way? Because I'm thinking the winner of Cater versus Sterling.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. I mean, Cater, I feel like he's confined to a certain position in the division. I'll never get off the whooping that Max put.
Yeah.
His light has been kind of dimmed.
He'll never get beyond 5th if he's like. Do you know what I mean? Like he'll never.
I struggle putting him in that elite level. After that beatdown, and then it was very close. Him and Emmett,
Yeah,
Emmett isn't in that category. Come on, I know he just got his big knockout. I don't want to dump on Josh Emmett. But like when we talk about this, like the prime positions on the grid in bantamweight, it is emerging at featherweight as well. Volkanovski, Ila Topuria, Evloev, and Allen, and of course, Max Holloway. That is that's the leading pack.
Oh, that's a great set of like contenders and champion right there. Like that's a great set that you got, and that's actually goes back to my issue with middleweight is that. Kind of don't have that, but maybe it's going to start to come through, in the next 6 months to a year that we are going to have actually a bunch of fresh names in there. I mean, admittedly, they're not really that enticing to me. Like Brendan Allen and Joe Pyfer aren't that interesting to me as contenders. Bo Nickel is an interesting one. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that I would actually just stick Bo Nickel in a title fight now because, like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, what he loses? So what? Like, you got the massive push. I don't know. That's just my thinking on these things.
Well, he's fighting at UFC 300.
Yep, I can't wait. Opening the card. Jim Miller's on that card as well, thank God, against Bobby Green. Winner of that, I can tell you this right now, they'll be ranked 15th, and then the next fight will be Paddy Pimblett. So Paddy can slip in there, and he's going to get the Sean O'Malley treatment.
Does Paddy Pimblett, does he beat Bobby Green?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
All right.
Do you think he beats Jim Miller? Do you want him to beat Jim Miller?
I think he beats Jim Miller.
Yeah. I would want Jim Miller to win because that would be brilliant. Can you imagine? Just him like grinding him down up against the cage and just like... Oh man! All right, we're wobbling on here. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about from this card?
No. I mean, sedate Tavares, seeing as we're blowing through our time limit anyway.
Oh, have we? I haven't really kept track of time on this, but
yeah, we're all over the shot, mate. We just crossed the 1 hour mark.
All right, cool.
Great.
We'll wrap this up. It was a great fight. Watch it. Cool. Counter striker, someone leading the dance. Brilliant. Matador Bull, if you wish.
Who won?
I had Side. Is that how you say his name?
Side. I had
yeah.
Him as well.
Really good fight. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. You can contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. We will get back to you. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. And congratulations on your win.
Yep, thank you, Joe.
2 points to 1 out of...
I'll take it.
Yeah, you have to. There was a bit where, like, in that main event, I'm like, I can't lay an egg here. I need Dricus to come through, please. I need 1 point at the very least. Right, listeners, we'll be back next week. See you then. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.